When my son told me that I would not be welcome at his house for Christmas, I smiled, got in my car, and made one call. By the new year, I had their mortgage payments canceled. And that was just the beginning of my plan. Justice must be restored and arrogance punished. You won't believe what I did next. Maybe this year I could make my turkey, I suggested softly, sinking into Michael's leather couch. The same couch where your mother once praised the sage stuffing I made better than her grandmother's, she'd laugh. My words lingered in the cozy air, blending with the heavy sweetness of Isabella's costly vanilla candles. But behind that warmth, a chill was waiting to surface. Michael shifted in his seat, the glint of his wedding ring flashing beneath the glow of their towering Christmas tree. His shoulders curled inward, as if he knew what was coming. "Mom, you won't be welcome here this Christmas." The sentence slammed into me like a strike to the chest. For a moment, I simply stared, convinced I must have heard him wrong. "What do you mean? Why wouldn't I be welcome?" I asked, my voice steady though my chest tightened. Michael wouldn't meet my eyes. His gaze stayed glued to the marble coffee table, the very one I'd chosen with him last spring when Isabella insisted their old set wasn't refined enough. "Isabella's parents are visiting," he murmured. "They'd rather you not be here." My fingers stiffened in my lap. They'd rather. The words stung colder than the winter air outside. "It's just easier this way, Mom. You know how her family is with their traditions. They like things their way." Michael's voice grew weaker with every word, as though he was folding in on himself. My eyes swept across the living room, the silk curtains I'd bought when Isabella demanded more privacy, the hardwood floors paid for with my second mortgage, the crown molding that had driven my credit card to its limit. Every inch of the room carried my sacrifice, yet I was the one unwelcome. Every corner of this house carried my touch, my sacrifice, my love for my son. "Their own way," I echoed slowly. "And what way is that, Michael?" He flinched. "Mom, please, don't make this harder." From the kitchen archway, my eyes fell on Isabella's shiny KitchenAid mixer, the top model she had to have for her holiday baking phase that fizzled after 3 weeks. $2,000 of my money, gleaming on the counter, likely used no more than twice since October. "And where am I supposed to spend Christmas then?" The words slipped out softer than I meant, almost a whisper. Michael's face fell apart. "Maybe you could, I don't know, visit Aunt Rosa, or we could do something the weekend after." The weekend after. As if Christmas were nothing more than an appointment to be pushed around on their calendar. I stood up, my knees aching from years of carrying it all alone. "I understand, Mom. Wait." But I was already walking straight toward the door, past the family photos where my face grew smaller and smaller, pushed further and further away in each frame, past the closet crammed with Isabella's coats. My hand closed around the doorknob, cold and hard under my palm. "Michael," I said, not looking back, "tell Isabella's parents. Feliz Navidad." The December air struck my face like a sharp slap as I walked toward my car. Behind me, Michael called my name once. Then came the quiet final click of the door shutting. Absolute. I sat behind the wheel, engine still, staring at the Christmas lights glittering in windows of homes where I no longer belonged. My phone buzzed in my bag, likely Michael, reaching for comfort words and hollow guilt. I let it ring. I would not answer. Instead, I turned the key and drove into the night, leaving behind the warm glow of the house I had paid for, but would never truly belong to. The heater whispered against the December chill as I steered through streets I knew too well. South Hills stretched around me, every corner a reminder of the woman I once was, the mother who believed family was everything, who would give her last dollar just to see her son smile. That woman was a fool. At the red light on 29th and Grand, I paused, watching a young father pack Christmas gifts into his SUV. His children pressed their noses to the glass, fogging it with pure excitement. Once, that had been Michael and me, before Isabella, before I was reduced to nothing but a purse with feelings too inconvenient to tolerate. Figures spun in my mind like a broken slot machine, each number a reminder of what I had given and what was taken for granted. $2,800 a month for 5 years. Last spring, when I finally added it all up, the calculator choked. $140,000, more than I'd ever saved for my entire retirement. Gone. Just gone. I pressed the gas harder than I should have when the light turned green. The car roared, matching the storm rising inside me. 5th Street. That was where I'd refinanced my home. The house Maria and I had built together, put at stake just to cover their down payment. The loan officer had studied me with a pity I hadn't noticed back then. "Mrs. Flores, are you certain? You're risking everything for someone else's investment." Someone else's investment? Not my son's future? Not my family's security? Someone else's investment. The words cut deeper now than they ever did then. Lincoln Street, the bank where I took out a second mortgage when Michael lost his job 2 years ago. "Just temporary, Mom. Just until I get back on my feet." Isabella stood behind him then, a $700 purse on her shoulder, nodding with rehearsed sympathy while her eyes measured the price of my desperation. It turned out my sacrifice was worth exactly nothing to them. I turned into my driveway, the one lined with cracked concrete I never repaired, every extra dollar drained into their flawless suburban dream. The porch light flickered weakly, another fix I'd delayed too long. Inside, silence pressed down on me. No Maria's laughter, no warmth of family gatherings, just an empty shell of a home stripped of the joy it once held. My phone rang as I struggled with the keys, the sharp tone bouncing against the hollow walls. Isabella's name lit up the screen, no doubt ready with excuses for why I wasn't worthy of her parents' fragile standards. Perfect. I had waited 5 long years for this moment, and now the line between silence and reckoning was about to break. I answered on the 4th ring, letting her stew just long enough to wonder if I would pick up. "Margaret." Isabella's voice oozed with false sweetness, the same syrupy tone she used whenever she needed me to cover the water bill or the property taxes. "I heard about the little misunderstanding with Michael." Misunderstanding? I leaned against the cold kitchen counter, still in my coat. "No, Isabella. There is no misunderstanding. You've made your position perfectly clear. Look, I know this may sound harsh, but you have to see it from my parents' perspective. They're very traditional. They expect a certain atmosphere during the holidays." "A certain atmosphere," I echoed, each word deliberate. "And what atmosphere would that be, Isabella?" Silence. Then the faint rustle of shopping bags reached my ear. Probably spending money that should have gone to their mortgage. Money that somehow became my responsibility. "Well, they're not used to your kind of cooking," Isabella added, her tone dripping disdain. "All that spicy Mexican food, the loud music, and frankly, Margaret, they're educated people. They expect talk of current events, literature, art." Each word landed heavier than a fist. Not just dismissal, erasure. 8 years of biting my tongue, of swallowing every insult for Michael's sake, of ignoring the way Isabella looked at me as if I were nothing more than hired help. My kind of cooking. My voice remained steady, cold. "You mean the meals you devoured every Sunday for 3 years when money was tight? The tamales you claimed tasted just like your grandmother's?" A beat of silence. "That was different," she muttered. "We were grateful then, but now, with my parents..." "Now with your parents, you can't have the Mexican peasant embarrassing you at your fancy dinner table." The false sweetness evaporated. "Don't be dramatic, Dennis. This isn't about race, it's about class. My father graduated summa cum laude from Washington State. My mother speaks 4 languages. They summer in the Hamptons. And what could you possibly add to their dinner table? Tales of scrubbing floors?" Heat surged through my chest, but my voice stayed even, sharp. I built a business from nothing after your husband's grandfather passed. I've employed more than 50 people. I've paid more in taxes than your father earned in his best year." A beat. Isabella's reply cut like glass. "Money isn't everything, Margaret. Breeding matters, education matters, and frankly, Maria knew her place better than you know yours." The line froze into silence. She crossed a line, the one I hadn't known was there until she trampled it in her designer heels. "What did you just say about Maria?" My voice dropped, low and sharp. "I'm only saying she knew how to fit in better," Isabella replied smoothly. "She didn't stir trouble. She understood that some spaces weren't meant for her." My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles blanched white. "Maria carried more grace in her little finger than your entire bloodline could ever dream of." "Oh, please. She was just a house cleaner who got lucky. At least she had the sense to stay quiet about it." "Isabella." My voice fell into something deeper, colder, a tone I barely recognized as my own. "Listen to me carefully. This conversation is over." "We're done pretending this is a family," I said flatly. "We're done." I repeated, then ended the call. I placed the phone gently on the counter, my hands steady, almost calm. The kitchen around me seemed altered, smaller, stripped bare, but lighter too, as if the air itself had been purged of a long rotting weight. I moved to the desk in the corner and drew out the manila folder I had ignored for months. Bank statements, mortgage papers, 5 years of automatic withdrawals that had drained me hollow while they lived like royalty. Enough. Time to stop the bleeding. Part 4. The first step, cancel the mortgage. The papers fanned across my kitchen table like evidence in a courtroom. 5 years of bank statements, each marked by the same withdrawal. $2,800 on the 15th of every month, vanishing from my account into theirs, a ledger of my own foolish generosity. I reached for the calculator. The first year, $33,600. The second year, another $33,600. By the third year, I had stopped buying myself new clothes. By the fourth, I was pushing a cart through discount grocery aisles. And by the fifth, this year, I survived on peanut butter sandwiches for lunch just to keep afloat. $143,400. And that wasn't even counting the down payment or the countless utility bills I paid when Isabella's shopping habits spun out of control. Not counting the new roof, the landscaping, the furniture that was deemed essential for their lifestyle. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the numbers until they blurred together. Maria's life insurance payout, my retirement savings, the college fund we once set aside for grandchildren, I now realized I'd never be allowed to meet. All of it, gone, poured into a house where I was no longer welcome for Christmas dinner. I reached for my phone, scrolling through my contacts until I landed on the bank's number. The automated voice offered options in English and Spanish. How considerate, how polite for people like me. "Customer service, this is Jennifer. How may I assist you today?" "I need to cancel an automatic transfer," I said, my voice steadier than it had been in years. "Of course, ma'am," she replied. "I'll need your account number and some verification details." I recited the numbers, listening to her keystrokes in the background. Professional, efficient, without a hint of judgment as to why a 62-year-old woman was canceling payments on what was likely her son's mortgage. "I see the transfer you're referring to, Mrs. Flores. $2,800 each month to Wells Fargo. Account ending in 7423. How long have you been making this transfer?" 5 years. The words left a bitter taste on my tongue. "And you want to cancel it effective immediately?" I glanced around my kitchen, the aging appliances I could never replace, the walls crying out for paint, the draft seeping through windows I couldn't afford to fix. Every repair postponed, every comfort denied, because my money had built someone else's castle. "Effective immediately," I confirmed. "Done. The transfer has been canceled. Is there anything else I can help you with today?" "No," I answered, and the word felt better than I expected. "No, that's all." I ended the call and sat in the sudden quiet of my house. Outside, December darkness was folding itself over Spokane, sealing the night around me. Christmas lights glimmered in windows where families gathered freely. No conditions, no judgment, no masks to wear. For the first time in 5 years, next month's budget would finally balance. For the first time since Maria passed, I could replace the porch light, buy real groceries, maybe even dream of a small vacation. A life of my own, however modest, was within reach again. I gathered the bank statements, the mortgage papers, every record of my misplaced generosity. I carried them to the fireplace, struck a match, and watched as 5 years of sacrifice crumbled into ash. The flames warmed my face, warmer than I had felt in years. My phone buzzed on the counter, likely Michael with an apology, or Isabella begging for something essential, like new throw pillows. I didn't look, not anymore. Instead, I poured myself a glass of the good whiskey, the bottle I had saved for an occasion that never seemed to arrive. Tonight was occasion enough. I lifted the glass toward the empty room, toward Maria's photograph on the mantel, toward the woman I used to be and the one I was becoming. "Merry Christmas. To me," I whispered, and this time, I meant it. Part 5. Isabella's Provocation. Morning came sharp and clear, December sunlight pouring through my kitchen windows as I sipped my second cup of coffee. For the first time in years, I wasn't counting the dollars set to vanish from my account in 3 days. Freedom itself tasted richer than the Colombian brew in my cup, the Colombian blend I had finally let myself buy. At exactly 10:47 a.m., my phone rang. Isabella's name lit up like a warning label. Margaret. Her voice carried that thin edge of impatience she never quite hid. "I need you to pick up my parents from Spokane Airport. Their flight from Portland lands at 2. I lowered my mug carefully, watching the steam rise, curling into the ceiling like a signal of the storm to come. "Isabella, did you already forget our conversation yesterday?" I asked, my voice low. "Look, whatever that was, let's focus on practical matters. My parents need a ride, and you're the only one free during the day." The audacity stole my breath. The sheer entitlement was staggering. Not even 24 hours after declaring I wasn't worthy of sitting at her Christmas table, she now expected me to play chauffeur for her parents. "And you'll do it because that's what family does, Margaret. They help each other." Her voice tightened with irritation. "Besides, let's be honest. You're not my rival. You're far too weak to be that. So just get in your car and pick them up." There it was, the final insult, disguised as a command. "What airline?" I asked softly, my voice measured. "Alaska Air, Flight 447. They'll be at baggage claim, Carousel 3. And Margaret, make sure whoever meets them can handle their luggage properly. Don't embarrass us." I could hear her nails tapping against something hard, each click a note of arrogance. I leaned back in my chair, eyes resting on the blank screen of my phone. 2 o'clock, Flight 447, baggage claim, Carousel 3. My gaze shifted to the clock above the sink. 10:52 a.m. Plenty of time. I poured another cup of coffee, added an extra spoonful of sugar, and unfolded yesterday's paper to the unfinished crossword. 7 across, delayed gratification, 12 letters, fitting. The answer revealed itself at last. Part 6. The Airport Trap. At 2:15 p.m., I was nestled into my favorite armchair with a fresh cup of Earl Grey and the Sunday edition of the Spokane Review. Yesterday's crossword lay finished on the coffee table. Delayed gratification had been postponement. My phone buzzed against the wood. Isabella's name lit the screen once more. I let it ring, untouched. The December sun poured through my living room windows, warming the space where I had spent countless lonely nights tallying the price of my generosity. But today, the silence felt different, earned, deliberate. 2:47 p.m. My phone buzzed again. This time, a preview of Isabella's message glowed on the screen. "Mom, where are you? My parents are..." I flipped the phone face down and turned back to the sports section. The Seahawks had lost again. Some things, it seemed, never changed. By 3:30, my phone had buzzed 6 times. I'd finished the newspaper, brewed a second pot of tea, and started organizing the junk drawer in my kitchen table. Amazing what you could accomplish when you weren't rushing around serving people who considered you their personal bellhop. The 7th call came at 3:45. This time it wasn't Isabella's name, but a familiar number, likely her parents, borrowing a stranger's phone at the airport. I let it ring as well. Outside my window, a neighbor strung Christmas lights across his porch while his children darted through the yard with that wild December energy. Normal families, living normal lives, things I had once believed I belonged to. No one was coming for them, and no one was stranded for me. 4:15 p.m. My phone began to ring without pause. Isabella, then the unknown number, then Isabella again. The buzzing droned on, like an enraged wasp trapped against glass. I crossed the kitchen, reached for the cord, and unplugged the landline from the wall. Silence. Absolute. Then I powered my cell phone completely off. Silence. Perfect and whole. I fixed myself a grilled cheese sandwich and warmed a can of tomato soup, simple comfort I hadn't tasted in months, because every grocery dollar had been sacrificed to keep their lifestyle afloat instead of my own. The cheese melted into a perfect golden crisp. The soup steamed gently in my favorite mug. Outside, the winter sun slid toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard. Somewhere across town, 3 people were likely stranded in an airport parking garage, bickering over taxi fare and fuming at the audacity of their servant abandoning them. The image alone made my soup taste richer, warmer. By 5 p.m., I had finished dinner, loaded the dishwasher, and was debating which movie to watch. It had been years since I'd enjoyed an evening entirely to myself. No emergency pleas for money, no frantic last-minute demands. My hand reached for the remote when it began. A pounding at the front door. Not knocking, pounding. The kind of violent hammering that shook the frame and carried with it nothing but rage. I placed my teacup down and moved slowly toward the noise, already certain of who awaited me beyond the wood. The pounding grew fiercer with each step I took, every strike shaking the doorframe like a drumbeat of rage. Peering through the peephole, I saw them. 3 figures crammed onto my narrow porch, like wolves tightening their circle around prey. I opened the door, and Cody Jenkins's flushed face loomed inches from mine. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he barked, shoving past me into the living room without so much as an invitation. "We stood at that damn airport for over 3 hours." Catherine trailed behind him, her usually flawless hair in disarray, her mouth drawn tight into a line carved from pure hatred. "This is disgraceful behavior for someone your age, Margaret, utterly barbaric." Isabella stumbled in last, her designer coat creased, her makeup smudged. "You humiliated us. Do you even realize what you've done? My parents had to spend $40 on a taxi because you— Get out of my house!" My voice sliced through their chorus of fury like a blade through silk, calm, sharp, undeniable. They froze mid-rant, startled by the steel threaded through my voice. "Excuse me?" Cody's face shifted from red to purple. "You don't get to make demands here, lady, not after what you pulled today." "This is my house," I replied softly, unmoving by the doorframe. "And I want you out. Now." Catherine stepped forward, her tone steeped in the condescension she had mastered over decades of looking down on women like me. "Margaret, you clearly don't understand the gravity of your mistake. My husband has connections all over this city, business ties, social circles. You can't treat people like us this way and expect—" "This is a lesson for you," I cut in, my eyes locking on hers without a blink. "A lesson about your bloated arrogance and the way you trample those you believe are beneath you." Isabella's jaw dropped. "A lesson? Who do you think you are to lecture anyone? You're nobody. I'm someone who finally stopped being your personal bank account and chauffeur," I said evenly. I stepped aside, pulling the door open wide. Class is dismissed. You can leave now. Cody thrust a finger toward my chest but stopped short of contact. You have no idea who you're dealing with, old woman. I've been in this town longer than you've been drawing breath. I know people, powerful people, who can make your life very, very hard. Is that a threat, Mr. Jenkins? I asked, my tone calm as stone. It's a promise. His voice sank to a low, venomous whisper. You think abandoning elderly people at an airport is something you can do without consequence? You're about to find out how wrong you are. Cody's voice thundered. Catherine nodded, her smile thin and glinting like a blade. Indeed, actions have consequences, Margaret, and yours will be very public. Isabella clutched her father's arm. Daddy, let's just go. This pathetic old woman isn't worth our time. They filed out of my house like a beaten army, though Cody turned at the threshold. You'll regret this, he hissed. I guarantee it. I shut the door firmly and slid the deadbolt into place with a satisfying click. Through the window, I watched them cram into their rental car, still bickering, their silhouettes swallowed by the December darkness as they drove away. The house seemed cleaner with them gone, as if their presence had left a film of grime that only now lifted. Yet their parting words lingered in the silence. Public consequences, powerful people, connections. I returned to the living room and lifted my tea, still warm in its mug. For the first time in this entire ordeal, a flicker of concern stirred within me. Not fear, but awareness. But that concern was quickly eclipsed by something far stronger: anticipation. 3 days later, I was sipping my morning coffee, leafing through the Spokane Review, when my own face stared back at me from page 3. The headline screamed, "Spokane woman abandons elderly couple at airport during holiday storm." My hands froze around the mug, the warmth bleeding away into cold porcelain. There I was, printed in stark black and white, an old photo from my company's website, at least 5 years outdated. Beneath it, a story that made my blood run cold and my temper ignite all at once. Cody and Catherine Jenkins, in town to visit their daughter for Christmas, had been stranded at Spokane International Airport for over 4 hours on Sunday, when family member Margaret Flores failed to appear for a so-called prearranged pickup. The article claimed the couple, both in their late 50s, had waited in frigid conditions as a winter storm warning was issued for the region. Winter storm warning? It had been 52 degrees and sunny. We couldn't believe someone would abandon us like that, Cody Jenkins, a retired banking executive, was quoted. We called again and again, but Mrs. Flores never answered her phone. We were forced to take an expensive taxi through dangerous weather. Dangerous weather. A lie printed in bold ink, swallowed whole by anyone too blind to question it. At our age, this kind of treatment is not just inconsiderate, it's dangerous. The article continued with quotes about my pattern of erratic behavior and concerns about my mental state. Cody had painted himself and Catherine as helpless victims of a cruel old man who'd suddenly snapped without provocation. No mention of the Christmas dinner rejection, no context about Isabella's demands or their years of financial exploitation. Just me, the villain who abandoned poor elderly tourists during a blizzard that existed only in Cody's imagination. I set my coffee down and read the article again, slowly once, then a third time. The byline carried the name Patricia Morrison, lifestyle editor. The name meant nothing to me, but the tactic was familiar. Cody had cashed in favors, leaned on his banking connections, and placed the story exactly where it would cut deepest: my reputation. Clever. Very clever. For the first time since this entire ordeal began, I felt a reluctant respect for my adversaries. They weren't just spoiled children throwing tantrums. They were deliberate, calculating. They knew that in a city like Spokane, reputation was currency, and one carefully placed article could erase decades of labor. This wasn't petty anymore. They had declared total war. I folded the newspaper with deliberate care and set it aside, my thoughts sliding into the disciplined focus that had once built my business from the ground up. This was no longer about airport pickups, no longer about Christmas dinners or mortgage checks. This was about victory. I opened my laptop, fingers steady, and began typing names into the search bar. Cody Jenkins, Catherine Jenkins, Isabella Flores, their social media trails, their connections, their patterns, their weaknesses, everything they had carelessly scattered across the internet for years. If they wanted to play chess, then I would show them what it meant to face a true strategist. My eyes shifted to the wall calendar. December 18th, 7 days until Christmas. 7 days to craft something they would never forget. For the next 3 days, I lived in a different world. Not the world where I was Margaret Flores, the tired old woman who let her family trample her, but the world where I was Margaret Flores, businesswoman, strategist, a woman who had built everything from nothing and would not allow a nest of entitled parasites to destroy what I had labored 40 years to create. My laptop became my command center. My browser bloomed with social media profiles, spread before me like cards in a high-stakes game. Cody Jenkins, retired First National Bank manager, member of the Spokane Country Club, treasurer of the Inland Northwest Business Leaders Association. A man who had built his life on positions of trust and influence. A man with everything to lose if those foundations cracked. Catherine's Instagram displayed a flawless portrait of refined living, charity luncheons, wine tastings, sun-drenched vacations in Coeur d'Alene, all tagged with the hollow caption, "Number blessed life." Every post meticulously curated to radiate success and sophistication. Friends lined the comments, praising her elegant taste and inspiring lifestyle. But I knew the truth. It was all built on other people's money, including mine. Isabella's Facebook timeline, however, told the real story. Posts gushed about our beautiful home, complete with photos of the kitchen I had paid for, check-ins at high-end restaurants during the very months I covered their utility bills, a status update from just last week. So excited for Christmas dinner with family, can't wait to show off our hosting skills. Our hosting skills, our home, our success, all of it built on my sacrifice, yet claimed as their triumph. The narcissism was staggering, but it was Michael's LinkedIn profile that handed me the final piece. His recent activity revealed a new connection. Patricia Morrison, lifestyle editor at the Spokane Review, the very same Patricia Morrison who had penned the hatchet job that dragged my name through ink and mud. I leaned back in my chair, surveying the evidence glowing across my screen. They had made 3 fatal errors. First, they had utterly underestimated me. Second, they had taken their attack public, granting me the right to answer in kind. And third, they had chronicled their pampered lives online, crafting for me a flawless catalog of hypocrisy. I opened Patricia Morrison's profile. 43 years old, journalism degree from WSU, 15 years at local papers, no ties to banking or finance, which meant Cody had reached out cold, likely through a contact in his business circle. A 5-minute scan of local business directories confirmed it. 3 mutual connections between Cody and Patricia's editor. The article hadn't simply materialized. It had been planted. The kitchen renovation, when Isabella declared granite countertops essential. $18,000 charged to my credit card. 60 monthly mortgage payments of $2,800 each, $168,000 and counting. $250,000, more than I had spent on myself in the past decade. My phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number, probably Isabella testing a new angle. I ignored it and kept working. By nightfall, every document lay sorted inside a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. Bank statements, receipts, screenshots of their social media posts flaunting purchases I had paid for, a printed copy of the newspaper article, my handwritten notes scrawled in the margins, marking every lie, every distortion. I lifted my gaze to the wall calendar. December 24th was circled in red, not for Christmas, but because it marked the perfect day for justice. Isabella's Facebook events confirmed they were hosting Christmas dinner for 12 guests. Family, friends, neighbors, pillars of their social circle. The very same people who read the Spokane Review and formed their judgments from its pages. The very same people who deserved to hear the truth. I shut my laptop and stepped into the kitchen where my good camera waited, the one I had bought years ago to document job sites for my business. Now it would serve a very different purpose. Tomorrow was Christmas Eve. Tomorrow, Cody Jenkins and his family would learn exactly what happens when you declare war on someone who truly knows how to fight. Christmas Eve morning arrived gray and bitter, the kind of Spokane winter day that made most people grateful for warm homes and family tables. Too bad I wasn't welcome at either. But I had other plans. I spread out my evidence like an attorney preparing for trial, bank statements lined up by year, each monthly transfer neatly highlighted in yellow. Receipts arranged in perfect chronology, tracing the pattern of how I had bankrolled their lifestyle. Photos pulled from their social media, Isabella's glittering new jewelry, their vacation snapshots, the lavish Christmas decorations now adorning their home. All of it printed and copied 12 times, one packet for every dinner guest. The newspaper article crowned each stack, my red pen annotations bleeding through the margins like wounds made visible. Lie scrawled beside Cody's line about dangerous weather. False. Next to the claim of my so-called erratic behavior, I had highlighted the glaring omission. 5 years of financial sacrifice erased from the record. Then I dressed with care, in my best attire, the navy coat I had worn to Maria's funeral, pressed and waiting for another kind of farewell. Today, I was saying goodbye to the woman who had been her family's doormat. Tonight, I would be someone who commanded respect. At 6:30 p.m., I slid the evidence packets into my briefcase and drove toward Kendall Yards. Their house blazed with warm light, cars packed tight in the driveway and spilling onto the street. Through the broad front windows, I saw silhouettes bustling around the dining room, Isabella playing hostess in the very house my money had purchased for her performance. I parked across the street and glanced at my watch. 6:45. Perfect. Late enough for every guest to be seated at the table, yet early enough they'd still be lingering over the main course. No easy exits, no graceful excuses. The front door naturally was unlocked. Of course it was. Isabella loved flaunting how safe their neighborhood was, how people like them had no need for locks, unlike those who lived in rougher parts of town. I slipped inside quietly, the rush of warm air colliding with the sounds of laughter spilling from the dining room. Catherine's voice rang out above the clinking of glasses. "But darling, that's not how we do things in our family." Laughter followed, easy and careless. Our family. After everything they had done to cut me out of it. I entered the dining room with my briefcase in hand. 12 faces swung toward me, their expressions ricocheting from shock to horror. Isabella froze mid-sip, her wineglass suspended in the air. Michael's complexion drained to white. Cody and Catherine looked as if they had seen a ghost. "Good evening, everyone," I said evenly, placing my briefcase on their gleaming marble sideboard. "I trust you won't mind if I join your Christmas celebration." Isabella was the first to recover her voice. "Margaret, this is completely inappropriate. You need to leave. Now." "Actually," I replied, unlatching my briefcase and drawing out the first stack of papers, "I believe your guests deserve to know who really paid for this dinner, for this house, and for the lifestyle you've been parading." A woman I didn't recognize, likely one of Catherine's charity friends, leaned forward, curiosity flickering in her. "What is she talking about?" "Isabella. She's having some sort of episode," Isabella stammered quickly. "Michael, call someone." But I was already circling the table, sliding a packet of documents in front of each guest. "Here are the bank records," I said, almost casually. 5 years of financial support. $168,000 in mortgage payments alone, plus the down payment, the renovations, the furniture, the appliances, everything you see around you. The room fell into silence, broken only by the soft rustling of papers as 12 guests sifted through the evidence. I watched their expressions shift, shock, calculation, dawning realization, as the numbers and dates sank in, the undeniable proof of my sacrifice and their deceit. "This is," a man began, then faltered, eyes locked on a bank statement. "Outrageous," finished the woman across from him, her voice sharp with disbelief. "Isabella, why didn't you ever mention any of this?" one guest demanded. Isabella's flawless facade began to fracture. "It's more complicated than it looks. Margaret volunteered. We never asked." "Actually," I cut in, sliding the newspaper article onto the table, "let's discuss what you did ask for and what you told the media about me." The air in the room seemed to chill by 10 degrees. I laid copies of the newspaper article across the table, watching the guests' eyes widen as they recognized my photo from the smear piece published 3 days ago. "Now," I said, my voice cutting clean through the stunned silence, "let's talk about the real manipulators in this family." Cody's face drained of color, shifting from crimson to a lifeless gray. Catherine sat stiffly in her chair, her wine glass dangling forgotten in her hand. "Mr. Jenkins here," I continued, tapping the newspaper with one finger, "used his banking connections to plant this story. Notice how I'm painted. Unstable, dangerous, the villain who abandoned poor elderly victims in the cold." A gray-haired man in an expensive sweater looked up slowly from the article, his brows knitting together. "Cody, what is this about?" someone asked. The weather was 52 degrees and sunny, I cut in before Cody could form a word. And they weren't stranded tourists. They were Isabella's parents, coming to the Christmas dinner I was banned from because apparently I wasn't good enough for their company. Catherine finally sputtered, "That's not, we never said—" "You never said what, Catherine?" I pressed, pulling out my phone, already open to screenshots of Isabella's social media posts. "That I was too low class for your parents. That my Mexican cooking and working class words would humiliate you in front of your educated friends." The woman I recognized as one of Catherine's charity companions shifted uneasily in her chair. "Catherine, surely you didn't," she murmured. "He's twisting everything!" Cody burst out, but the bluster rang hollow, his voice stripped of conviction. "This woman has serious mental health issues. The stress of aging, financial problems." "Financial problems?" I nearly laughed. "Mr. Jenkins, I've been propping up your daughter and son-in-law with nearly $3,000 a month for 5 years. The only financial problems in this room are the ones you're about to face." I shifted my gaze to the entire table, letting the weight of my words settle like stone. These people have drained $200,000 from me while mocking me behind my back. They turned my own son against me, barred me from family gatherings, and when I finally stood up for myself, they tried to annihilate my reputation in the press. Michael spoke at last, his voice no more than a whisper. "Mom, I didn't know about the newspaper." "Your wife knew," I answered softly. "And her parents orchestrated it. They painted me as a villain simply because I refused to be their personal ATM and chauffeur." The social dynamic in the room shifted like tectonic plates grinding beneath the earth. I saw it written on the guests' faces, the slow, dawning realization that everything they had believed about tonight's so-called generous hosts was nothing but a facade built on lies. "This is unconscionable," murmured an elderly woman in pearls, her eyes fixed on the bank statement spread before her. "Cody, how could you allow your daughter to exploit this woman's generosity and then publicly attack her the moment she stopped funding it?" Cody's carefully polished facade began to crack. "You don't understand the full situation." "I understand perfectly," the woman cut in, her voice sharp as glass. "This woman has been carrying your family financially while you treated her like hired help. And when she finally said no, you tried to shred her reputation." Catherine's reply came out strangled, desperate. "She abandoned us at the airport. After you told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas dinner," I said evenly, "because my presence would be inappropriate for your parents." 5 years of paying your bills, while you sneered at me for my ethnicity, for my education. The silence that followed was suffocating. 12 pairs of eyes fixed on Cody and Catherine, their looks shifting from disgust to sheer embarrassment, forever aligning themselves with them. Isabella made a final, frantic attempt to seize control. "Everyone, please, this is just a family matter that's gotten out of hand." "No," I cut in firmly. "This stopped being a family matter the moment you dragged it into the public eye. When you weaponized the newspaper against me, when you decided my reputation was acceptable collateral damage for your pride." I let my gaze sweep the table, pausing on faces I barely knew, but who now understood exactly who I was. "I wanted you all to know the truth before you read about Margaret Flores in the paper again, because you will read about me again. But next time, it will be the real story." I snapped my briefcase shut and smoothed the front of my coat. "Enjoy the rest of your dinner. It will be the last one I ever pay for." As I walked toward the door, the eruption began behind me, voices rising in accusation, questions flung like daggers, the unmistakable sound of a carefully polished facade collapsing under its own weight. To me, it was the sweetest Christmas music I had ever heard. The letter came on a Tuesday morning in March, certified mail heavy with the weight of legal consequences in every line. I signed for it at the door, breathing in the spring air that carried the scent of new growth and possibility, not the winter desperation that had haunted those dark December nights. "Notice of default," the envelope declared, "a final demand for payment." Inside, 3 months of missed mortgage payments had surged over Michael and Isabella like a tsunami of reality. $8,400 in arrears, 14 days to bring the account current, or face foreclosure on the very house I had once helped them secure. I placed the letter aside and went back to my coffee, reading it as one might read about distant weather. Interesting, but no longer my concern. My phone had been buzzing for weeks with increasingly frantic calls. Isabella's number was blocked after her first hysterical voicemail, and Cody and Catherine, once so lofty, had seen their social standing in Spokane evaporate like morning mist after their Christmas dinner disgrace. Even Michael, whose calls I had ignored, torn between anger and the grim curiosity of how long it would take him to choke down his pride. The answer, it seemed, was 97 days. He came knocking on my door that Thursday evening, not the confident man who had once banned me from Christmas dinner, but a figure who looked as though he had aged 10 years in 3 months. Dark circles carved under his eyes, his once expensive suit wrinkled, the stench of desperation clinging to him like cheap cologne. "Mom," he said as I opened the door, "we need to talk." I stepped aside, letting him in. He glanced around my house as though seeing it for the first time. The new furniture I'd bought with my very first mortgage-free paycheck, the fresh paint-brightening walls untouched for 8 years, when every spare dollar had been siphoned into his lifestyle. Repairs I had finally been able to afford now that I wasn't subsidizing someone else's dreams. "Nice place," Michael murmured, his voice subdued. "It's what happens when you spend money on yourself," I answered, easing back into my new recliner, instead of on people who don't deserve it. "Appreciate it," I added, calm but firm. "Coffee?" He shook his head, perching on the edge of my couch as if afraid to settle in. "Mom, I need you to know how sorry I am. About everything." Christmas dinner, the newspaper article, the way Isabella, the way we treated you. "Go on," I urged, my voice low. "I didn't know about Cody planting that story. I swear I didn't. When I found out..." Michael dragged his hands through his hair, his composure breaking. "Jesus, Mom, the things they said about you behind your back, the way they spoke about our family, about Dad's memory." My jaw clenched at the mention of Maria, but I kept my voice steady. "And what exactly did they say about your mother?" "That she knew her place better than you knew yours. That she understood boundaries." Michael couldn't meet my eyes. "I should have defended you. I should have stood up to them years ago." Yes, I answered simply. You should have. We sat in silence, the weight of 5 years of failures pressing down between us. Outside, the hum of a neighbor's lawnmower drifted in, the ordinary sounds of an ordinary Thursday evening in an ordinary neighborhood, the kind of place where sons didn't banish their mothers from Christmas dinner. The house is in foreclosure, Michael said at last. We can't make the payments without— Michael stopped, the weight of his words finally dawning on him. Without my help, I finished for him. Without the money I poured into your lives every month, while you stood by and let your wife's family treat me like garbage. I know how it looks, Michael. I leaned forward, holding his gaze, refusing to let him look away. Do you know how much money I sent you over 5 years? Michael nodded miserably. Isabella added it up after Christmas. The mortgage, the down payment, everything. Over 200,000. 237,468, I corrected. I know the exact figure because I finally did something I should have done years ago. I added it up. His face collapsed under the weight of the number. Mom, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this. You can't fix it, son. The money's gone. But more than that, the years are gone. 5 years I could have spent building a relationship with you instead of supporting your wife's fantasy life. I know now. He looked up at me, a glimmer of hope, almost. But maybe we can start over? Maybe there's a way to— Are you asking me to resume the mortgage payments? I cut in. The flicker of hope in his eyes died instantly. We're going to lose everything, Mom. The house, Isabella's respect, her parents' approval. I don't know what I'll do. You'll figure it out, I said, not unkindly. The same way I figured out how to live without a son who respected me. The same way Mom learned to celebrate Christmas alone, while I celebrated with people who thought you were beneath them. Then Michael began to cry quietly, like someone who had exhausted all excuses, all escapes. I lost you, didn't I? I chose them over you. And now I've lost you forever. I looked at him for a long, heavy moment. This son I had raised, loved, and sacrificed for, who had let his wife's family convince him that his own mother wasn't worthy of their company. Michael, I said at last, my voice steady, you didn't lose me. You gave me away. There's a difference. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, broken by the truth. Is there any chance, any way, you could forgive me? I forgave you months ago, I said, and I meant it. But forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the way things were. It doesn't mean pretending this never happened, or that I'll resume funding a lifestyle where my role was to be grateful for the scraps of your attention. Then, what does it mean? Michael asked. I rose and walked to the mantel, where Maria's photo rested beside a new picture, me with Rosa and her family at Easter dinner, the first holiday I'd spent with people who genuinely wanted me there. It means, I said quietly, that if you want a relationship with me, you'll have to build it from scratch. It means giving me respect instead of demanding I earn it. It means making choices based on what's right, not on what's convenient. I turned back to Michael. And it means that the next time someone, your wife, her parents, anyone, tries to cut me out of family gatherings, you'll remember who actually behaves like family. He nodded slowly, understanding, perhaps for the very first time, that respect was never something you could take for granted. The house, Michael asked quietly, isn't your problem anymore? I sat back down, feeling lighter than I had in years. You're a grown man, Michael. Handle it the way grown men should. Get a job that pays enough to cover your bills. Sell the house and buy something you can actually afford. Stop living beyond your means and expecting others to carry the weight of your choices. He rose slowly, his shoulders squared, for the first time since he had arrived. You're right, about all of it. I know. He walked to the door, then hesitated, turning back. Mom, for what it's worth, seeing you stand up for yourself at Christmas dinner, I was proud of you, ashamed and angry, Yes, but proud too. Good, I said simply. Maybe there's hope for you yet. After he left, I poured myself a glass of good whiskey and stepped out onto my back porch. Spring was arriving in Spokane, the trees budding, the air softening with promise. In 4 months, I would turn 63. Maria had been gone 8 years. I had wasted 5 of those years as a doormat for people who never valued sacrifice. I wasn't planning to waste another. My phone buzzed. A message from Rosa. Dinner Sunday. I smiled. This time, it was an invitation I truly wanted to accept. The kids wanted to show her their school projects. I smiled and texted back, "You won't miss it, Mom." I realized that real family is the people who genuinely want you to be there. Everything else is just a fancy play, shows I stopped buying tickets for, stages where I was never welcome, and I'm done with that role forever. The whiskey tasted like freedom, and the future shone just as brightly as I was willing to make it. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. To hear the next story, simply click on the box to your left.